Welcome to the Administrative Review Training for the National School Lunch Program. Today you will be hearing from Taylor Schorsch, Allie Lampman, Jessica Vermansky, and Katie Parch. The purpose of today's training is to teach you how to prepare for the review. We have other trainings on our website to support you in program operations. You will receive 1 hour of training to count towards meeting annual professional standards requirements. A training certificate will be made available on the website. On this page, you will see a list of resources which are available for sponsors during the review process. This PowerPoint presentation will be made available on the website, along with SFA tools, which will be further explained throughout this training. Information on administrative reviews can be found on our website at Nebraska Department of Education Nutrition Services. The Administrative Review Flowchart is a great tool to help schools understand when to complete actions and who completes each action required for administrative reviews. Moving through the chart, you will see on the left-hand side a list of actions which need to be completed off-site or prior to NDE coming to your school for the review. The middle row shows responsibilities which will take place on-site or once NDE has come to your school for the review, and the right-hand side shows post-on-site actions or actions to complete after the review has taken place. You can determine which action is the school's responsibility or NDE's responsibility by noticing the color of each box. All gray filled boxes are NDE's responsibility. All yellow filled boxes are the school's responsibility, and any yellow filled box with a blue frame will be a collaboration between NDE and the school or sponsor. The administrative review areas the state agency is responsible for reviewing will be identified in detail shortly. There are questions we gather answers to and information and documentation schools provide before the NDE staff visits a school. These are referred to as the off-site questions, or questions you complete before we are on-site to visit your school meal program. The off-site questions support the NDE staff in completing a comprehensive assessment of a school's meals program. Off-site questions are accessed in the CNP system, which you can see in the pictures on this slide. Log in as you normally would to access your annual application or to complete a monthly claim. You will access the off-site forms using the compliance option from the menu across the top. You can review the off-site assessment guide for help in accessing and navigating around the forms. This slide shows the next steps in accessing the off-site questions after clicking on the Compliance tab. You can find the administrative review forms by first clicking on the Detail action next to Review Form. This will pull up the SFA off-site forms which are required to be completed prior to NDE visiting your school. The first portion of this PowerPoint will discuss 100 level, 200 level, and 300 level questions. Your program specialist or reviewer will provide the school with a document checklist as shown on this slide. This will show the documents the schools need to upload into CNP for the reviewer. This slide shows you how to upload the documents outlined on the document checklist, which was shown on the previous slide. Under the Compliance tab, you will click on Details next to Review Attachments. This will allow you to add attachments that are outlined on the document checklist. You will now review the administrative review process by program areas. The next portion of this PowerPoint will discuss certification and benefit issuance, meal counting and claiming, meal pattern compliance and dietary specifications, and general program requirements. As shown on a previous slide, you will access the off-site questions through the Compliance tab in CNP. The 100 and 200 level questions review certification and benefit issuance and verification, which we discussed on the previous slide. Answer these questions to the best of your ability, knowing we answer a similar set of questions and can ask for verification we may need. Certification, benefit issuance, and verification. Meal applications might be submitted for students also identified in the current school year's match list. In this case, provide to us the one that identifies the higher benefit for the student. The higher meal benefit should be the one associated with the students in the roster and the meal benefits assigned to them. As reviewers, we want to verify those students in the roster are receiving the correct meal benefits or make sure they are on the direct certification match list. You will need to provide NDE with documentation of each student's meal benefit in the form of a paper roster or a copy of electronic rosters with meal benefit codes. Meal counting and claiming refers to a system that accurately counts, records, consolidates, and reports the number of reimbursable meals claimed by category, such as free, reduced price, or paid. There must be someone trained to identify the required components of a reimbursable meal, to count meals served, and that person is required to be at the end of the service line in order to ensure that meals counted and claimed for reimbursement are complete. This is an internal control required to ensure that meals counted for the monthly claim for reimbursement are counted correctly, and the integrity of the program is upheld for all service models, such as grab and go, parent pickup, or in the cafeteria. In layman's terms, we are making sure that the SFA accurately counts reimbursable meals at the point of sale, either manually or electronically, and that the correct meal counts are submitted in the claim system for reimbursement. We are also ensuring each student has a correct meal benefit assigned, and correct counting is being made through a point of service system, which again, someone is trained to understand all the components to look for. As you know, reimbursable meals must follow the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program meal patterns. As shown on a previous slide, you can access the off-site questions through the Compliance tab in CNP. The 300 level questions review meal counting and claiming, which we discussed on the previous slide. Answer these questions to the best of your ability, knowing we answer a similar set of questions and can ask for verification we may need. What to do if inaccurate meal counts for the day of the review or the review month are found. The School Food Authority can report incorrect meal counts to the state agency and complete revision to the submitted claims. The state agency watches the meal service to ensure the meal counter identifies reimbursable meals correctly to ensure that meal counting is accurate. As a reminder, do not count meals served to adults, a la carte items, second meals, or second helpings. If you are operating the National School Lunch Program and processing free and reduced apps for income eligibility, you may also have fiscal action if not processed correctly. To wrap up the first portion of this PowerPoint, let's review the process for the sponsor. The sponsor is required to answer 100 level, 200 level, and 300 level off-site questions. They must ensure the claim for the review month is submitted in CNP. The sponsor must provide daily and monthly meal counts for the review month for sites that will be reviewed. They also must provide meal counts for the day of the on-site review for sites that were visited and reviewed.
Let's switch gears and jump into the portion of the menu review that covers the areas of meal pattern compliance and dietary specifications. We start off with an overview of meal pattern requirements for this school year. All meals offered in this school year must meet the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program meal patterns. These meal patterns emphasize fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and age-appropriate nutrition through quantity requirements. Receiving these high-quality nutritious meals will help our students learn better in school. We ask you contact NDE Nutrition Services with any challenges you are experiencing with supply chain. We will use the Dietary Specification Risk Assessment tool to help review your operations. This is a series of questions you will be asked to complete. In the CNP portal, the dietary specification risk assessment is completed off-site by you. Your reviewer will work with you on which sections to complete. In this tool, you will see questions like, do you cook with butter? Do you always serve low-sodium vegetables? Are your canned fruits in light syrup? Also, it will ask about portion sizes and condiments that you use on the regular. We will look at an example of the question in the portal shortly. After you complete that tool prior to our visit, the reviewer will also complete that tool based on our visual observation. This is to ensure the off-site answers match what is truly going on in your operation. The results of the dietary specification tool will determine if a nutrient analysis is required. Let's take another look at the CMP portal and where you will find the dietary specifications in the review form section of the Compliance tab. The red arrow shows you the 600 series, dietary specifications, and nutrition analysis in the off-site assessment. We are providing a few more steps here so you can reference later on how to actually access the tool and get started once your reviewer contacts you. To get started, click Modify, and a screen will appear first with some questions. Answer only question 601. Pick option 1, complete the dietary specification assessment tool. You can continue, but know an error message may appear. It is okay to continue as you and your reviewer will come back to these questions again. By answering this question, we have prompted the assessment tool, so let's take a look where to find those on the next screen. Next, scroll down on the off-site list to find your site, pictured here. Select Detail, and then your dietary specification assessment tool will populate for the meal services you provide. Here you see an assessment tool for breakfast and lunch. Here's the example of those questions I shared that you will complete. As you can see in number 3, low-fat, fat-free milk products are used. This includes yogurt and cottage cheese. For each question, you're going to select the number that corresponds to the best description. 1, always, which is every day or 5 days a week. 2, most items and most of the time, 3 to 4 days a week. 3, some items or some of the time, 1 to 2 days a week. Or 4, never, 0 days of the week. Continue through the questions, picking the answer that best describes your daily operation. Moving on to the menu review portion. A majority of this process of menu compliance is completed in the off-site tool we just reviewed. We will also work with you to pick a week of menus to review. We ask you to send menus, production records, and product documentation for that week to validate the components and quantities served. We will then work on assessing compliance with meal pattern and dietary specifications for the daily and weekly offerings and quantities. If you need a review or refresher on completing production records or meal pattern contributions, see the link on the screen to watch this amazing school meals training where our program specialists go into detail with the requirements. Product documentation can include the child nutrition labels, or CN labels, assigned product formulation statement, USDA product information sheets, or the nutrition fact panel and ingredient list. Documentation for all other menu items need to be provided for the week of menus. Other ways to provide the meal pattern contribution could be on the production record, a standardized recipe, or like we mentioned in the last screen, with a separate product documentation. Your whole grain rich items must have documentation, and a reminder not to submit product labels for fruits, vegetables, condiments, or spices. Lastly, we're going to cover fiscal action when out of compliance with meal pattern and dietary specification. These would include missing meal components or missing and incomplete production records, repeat violations for missing milk type or missing vegetable subgroups, or any non-reimbursable meals counted and then claimed at the point of service. Keep in mind that with fiscal action, we are not taking money from you, rather taking funding back that was improperly distributed. Let's review the steps in this section. The sponsor must answer the Dietary Specification 600 series questions in the Child Nutrition Portal. You will also submit production records and product documentation for the requested week. The reviewer will review menu and production records for the designated week of the review with the acceptable required product documentation. We will ensure that meal pattern is being met for breakfast and lunch and for each age and grade group. We will also review responses in the Dietary Specification Assessment tool, so you may get some back and forth from us at this point.
Next on the agenda, we will be reviewing general program requirements. On this slide, you will see several areas listed of general program compliance. Over the next few slides, we will be exploring these a little deeper. As we discuss each compliance area, we will also be referencing the off-site assessment forms in CNP that will need to be filled out by the SFA or school prior to the state agency reviewer coming on site. From CNP, this is a screenshot of what the review form looks like. Each topic area that we will review is associated with a set of questions. When you click Modify next to each of the topics, CNP will open up the set of questions for the sponsor or school to answer in that area. Let's begin with civil rights. Here is a list of what the reviewer will look at when visiting your site. The non-discrimination statement. This is the statement that notifies the public of the policy not to discriminate. The statement should be included on program informational materials. No child shall be denied benefits or discriminated against. Civil rights complaint procedure is the procedure that outlines the SFA's process if a civil rights complaint is filed against Food and Nutrition Services. It must meet the minimum requirements. In addition to the And Justice for All poster. This is the poster that serves as an equal opportunity policy notice to children that participate in child nutrition programs. This poster is required to be posted and visible to students at each site where meals are served. If your site needs additional posters, you can find those on our webpage at the NDE. We'll explore an overview of the special diets requirements. Oftentimes, special diets and special dietary needs can fall under the civil rights umbrella. We want to make sure that we continue to accommodate students with special dietary needs when their requests are supported with documentation from a licensed medical professional. The reason we have a medical statement form is because these requests typically do not meet meal pattern requirements. The student's medical documentation essentially becomes their meal pattern. This assures that you can comply with the dietary need while also being able to claim that meal as reimbursable. Sponsors can choose to make accommodations for dietary preferences and should keep their district policy in mind when doing so. For this type of a request, you would use the meal accommodation form. Accommodations for preferences must still meet all meal pattern requirements. You can visit our special dietary needs page for forms and additional resources at the NDE. During the review process, the sponsor, or SFA, will be responsible for answering the 800 series of off-site questions in CNP. They will answer questions that include providing the following documentation, such as the non-discrimination statement, annual civil rights training documentation and logs, civil rights complaint procedure, and accommodating special dietary needs procedure. The reviewer will be reviewing the off-site questions and any supporting documentation that is submitted. Below you will see the screenshot of the 800 series civil rights as it appears in CNP. Another area to be reviewed during the review process is the food safety requirements. Please remember to have your food safety or HACCP plan available when the reviewer is on site. Of course, we know safety in general, including food safety, have been heightened more than ever in the past couple of years. Your local public health department is the ultimate authority on food safety related questions. For state level guidance, you may also consult Erica Sanders. We've included her phone number and email for your convenience. You may also refer to our food safety webpage at the NDE for additional resources. Now we will explore the Buy American provision. School food authorities must ensure that all procurements using funds from the nonprofit school food service account comply with the Buy American provisions. This provision requires SFAs to purchase domestically grown and processed foods to the maximum extent practicable. This includes foods that are sold to students as a la carte food items. While rare, two situations may warrant a waiver to permit purchases of foreign food products, and those include: 1, if the product is not produced or manufactured in the U.S. in sufficient and reasonably available quantities that are of satisfactory quality, and the competitive bids reveal the cost of a U.S. product is significantly higher than the foreign product. If you have questions about these two situations, please feel free to reach out to one of our program specialists for guidance. You can also visit our Buy American webpage for the Buy American exemption form and additional resources. All right, so let's look at the review process for this section. So the sponsor will be responsible for the food safety and HACCP plan. Please make sure it's readily available and followed at all meal service sites. Please make sure that you have posted the most recent health inspection in a visible location. Ensure that standard operating procedures are current, and ensure that products meet the Buy American provision. For the reviewer, we will be reviewing dates of the most recent health inspections. We will review temperature and thermometer calibration logs, and we will review all standard operating procedures. On this slide, we will briefly discuss the Local Wellness Policy Triennial Assessment. Sponsors must have a district-wide local wellness policy that establishes goals and guidelines to promote student wellness and prevent and reduce childhood obesity. Sponsors should continue to implement the goals and standards included in their local wellness policy and comply with all requirements of the final rule. During the administrative review process, The sponsor will be responsible for answering the number 1000 series of offsite questions in CMP. There will be questions that include providing the following documentation. We will look at the local school wellness policy, the public notification policy, documentation of the review and update of the wellness policy, as well as assessment on the implementation of the policy. The reviewer will assist and review the offsite questions and review the supporting documents. Here you will see a screenshot of the 1000 series of questions from CNP titled Local School Wellness Policy. If someone else in your district oversees the local wellness policy, please work with them to complete the questions and obtain any documentation required. This slide briefly covers smart snacks and competitive foods. This refers to all products, food and beverages, sold during the day that are not part of a reimbursable meal. Sponsors must ensure that those food items and beverages meet Smart Snacks federal standards. Sponsors must also ensure that foods and beverages that are being sold outside of the meal program are not competing with meal sales. The Nebraska Competitive Food Policy is designed to assure healthy foods or meals for children are provided during the school day. Schools who participate in the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program are required to adhere to the following. No food or beverages can be sold to children anywhere on school premises beginning 1/2 hour before breakfast and or lunch service until 1/2 hour after meal service, unless all of those proceeds earned during these time periods go to the school nutrition program. No other program or club can sell foods or beverages during times that overlap or compete with the meal service offered by the school lunch or breakfast programs. If a vending machine not operated by the school nutrition program is open during the meal service period, the profit during that period must go to the school nutrition program. All foods sold during the school day will need to meet the nutrition standards as outlined in the Smart Snacks guidance. The Smart Snacks in Schools regulation applies to foods sold a la carte in the school store and vending machines. There are no requirements for food or beverages sold during non-school hours, for example, weekends and evenings. More information on Smart Snacks and competitive foods can be located on the NDE website under the section titled Smart Snacks. You are required to ensure that free water is available during the meal service. Water in the cafeteria does not have to be bottled. It can be a water fountain in or adjacent to the cafeteria. Some schools choose to use a water cooler, making sure that cups are available to the students as well. Please note this does not apply to breakfast in the classroom. During the review process, the sponsor will answer the 1100 series of offsite questions in CMP. They will provide a list of food and beverages sold a la carte, and they will provide product documentation for a few selected items that the reviewer has chosen to review. The reviewer will also review the offsite questions in CNP, and they will select the sample of items for the product documentation review. Again, you'll see a screenshot for the 1100 series titled Smart Snacks in CNP. Each meal site must be reviewed at least once during the year and must be completed by February 1st. You will utilize the on-site review summary or attachment I shown here. Sponsors with more than one school must review all sites operating lunch and at least 50% of the sites operating breakfast. During the review process, the sponsor will be responsible for answering the 900 series of offsite questions in CMP. You are responsible for conducting the monitoring visit by February 1st, as well as providing site monitoring forms for the reviewed sites. The reviewer will be reviewing the off-site questions in CNP, as well as reviewing the site monitoring forms for each site. Below, you see the screenshot of the 900 series questions in CNP titled SFA On-Site Monitoring. This slide lists reporting and record retention requirements. HACCP records are required for 1 year plus the current year, and all other program records such as production records, monitoring forms, meal counts, certification documents, and verification documents are required to be retained for at least 3 years plus the current year. During the review process, the sponsor will retain the program records and provide a sample of records during the on-site review. The reviewer will verify that all program records are kept for the required time frame. Any sponsors participating in the school breakfast or summer food service program must inform households of the availability of breakfast under the breakfast school program and meals offered through the summer food service program. The reviewer will be looking at these options on site. This can be done via your school webpage, newsletter, but documentation of this outreach must be provided. To sum up the review process for this section, the sponsor will be responsible for answering the 1600 series of off-site questions in CNP. You'll be responsible for notifying households of the breakfast program, if applicable, as well as notifying households of the availability of the SFSP across the state, even if it's not applicable at the district. The reviewer will be looking over those off-site questions in CNP. If your review is before February 1st and the on-site monitoring form has not yet been completed, we may look at previous year's monitoring forms or discuss a plan to complete the monitoring form prior to February 1st. Now we'll review professional standards requirements. Professional standards establish hiring and training standards to ensure that school nutrition program personnel in the school lunch program and school breakfast program have the knowledge and skills to manage and operate the programs successfully. School nutrition allows the sponsor flexibility to complete annual training requirements over a 2-year period. All training must be tracked on a training tracker with the key area and learning objective codes. Staff must complete the annual civil rights training, as we've discussed in previous slides, as well as any other training applicable to their day-to-day job duties. Please view the Professional Standards webpage at the NDE for more information. To summarize the review process for this section, the sponsor will answer the 1200 series of off-site questions in CNP. The sponsor will also provide a list of all employees, food safety training for directors and managers. They'll provide the training and tracking tool or method, as well as all supporting documentation for the completed trainings. The reviewer will review all of the off-site questions in this section and review any supporting documentation.
In order to complete the resource management component of the administrative review, the sponsor must answer the resource management off-site questions in the CNP system and provide additional information as requested. The state agency reviewer will complete the risk indicator tool to determine if any areas need to have a comprehensive review, which might require requesting additional documentation when needed. Schools must demonstrate that they appropriately use the school nutrition program funds. Therefore, there are procurement guidelines to follow based on the value of purchases that schools make using the funds. Schools must retain supporting documentation for all purchases made with the program funds. And schools have several options for making purchases. Schools use the micro-purchase option for purchases from a single vendor that total less than $10,000 annually. These purchases must be spread equitably among all qualified suppliers or vendors. Let's look at an example. Your annual purchase of ground beef totals $8,000. The value of the purchases is lower than the $10,000 annual threshold for micro-purchases, but if the ground beef purchases are all made from one vendor instead of from all qualified suppliers or vendors, then an SFA cannot apply the micro-purchase procurement method. Instead, these purchases would qualify as a small purchase for which price comparisons must be made, with price being the final determination in the purchase choice. Schools must use small purchase practices for those that exceed the $10,000 annual value for micro purchases but are less than the $250,000 upper limit for small purchase procurement. Small purchase procurement is also used for purchases that total less than $10,000 annually and are not spread among all qualified suppliers. This means you're making a choice to not quote-unquote spread the wealth. In this case, you must document price comparisons of apples to apples quote-unquote items and maintain this documentation. As a best practice, schools should price compare similar items from 3 available suppliers. The total price that accounts for the cost of the items, delivery fees, mileage driven to pick up the items would all be considered in the final price determination used to select the most economical option. Formal purchases that require an invitation for bid or request for proposal are used for purchases that exceed $250,000 annually. SFAs should be aware that their district's purchasing thresholds might be more restrictive than the federal thresholds. The SFA should make purchases according to those most restrictive thresholds based on how much they estimate to spend on goods or services.
The procurement review will be completed alongside the administrative review, and there will be 2 phases of documentation collection. The first will include completion of off-site questions, as well as submission of several documents, including a vendor paid list, a copy of your school's procurement plan, a copy of your school's code of conduct, and any other relevant policies or procedures related to procurement and purchasing. Your reviewer will use the first round of documents to select a sample of procurement records to review based on the vendors and purchase values. The second phase of documentation will include submission of supporting documentation for each selected vendor. This could be quotes or solicitation documents or receipts and invoices. The reviewer will then complete a review of all documentation provided and will follow up with a review summary that could include corrective action and/or technical assistance, as well as commendations as applicable. For schools with sites approved to operate the Fresh Fruit Vegetable Program, or FFVP, in school year 24-25, keep a few important things in mind. The Fresh Fruit Vegetable Program must be operated during the school day, and the items offered through the program cannot be provided at the same time as other child nutrition programs or meals like the school breakfast or school lunch. Fresh fruit vegetable must be separate. It's important to maintain the fresh fruit vegetable items receipts and invoices to prove that the grant money you received was spent on allowable costs. You're also required to track time for staff working in any of the capacities related to your delivery of the Fresh Fruit Vegetable Program. If the same staff work in the breakfast and lunch meal preparation and/or service, also work in the Fresh Fruit Vegetable Program, it's important to track the time specific to their Fresh Fruit Vegetable Program work separately from the time they work in the breakfast and/or lunch programs. In order to complete the FFVP, or Fresh Fruit Vegetable Program, component of the administrative review, the SFA staff must open and complete the Other Federal Programs form in the Off-Site Forms section. Here you can mark the FFVP box. Then the on-site reviewer will review program purchases and time certification documentation specific to the fresh fruit vegetable program. The reviewer will also review production records as well as make time to observe an FFVP service time on site. The after-school snack program review includes the same components as a review of the school lunch and/or breakfast meal service. This includes documentation that meal pattern is met for all claimed snacks, documentation of students' eligibility and which students eat snack on each day. An exception to this is for area-eligible sites where all snacks are served at no cost and reimbursed at the free rate of reimbursement. The review also includes a reconciliation of the review month's claim for reimbursement to ensure the daily meal counts match what was reported in the reimbursement request for the review month. To complete the administrative review portion of the after-school snack program, the sponsor will access the other federal programs form in the off-site forms list and mark the ASP box, as well as provide following documents to complete the review: production records for the selected week from the review month, documentation to explain or demonstrate that the sites accurately count and claim snacks, snack program rosters that include daily meal counts for the review month, and the after-school snack program review forms to ensure the reviews are completed in accordance with program and regulatory timelines. The reviewer will validate the snack counts claimed for the review period and the day of the on-site review, and will ensure that the ASP review forms that the school does for its sites are completed within the first 4 weeks of service, as well as a second review completed at any later date in the school year. This training has shared helpful and important information for you to support your completion of the initial off-site forms for the administrative and procurement reviews. We've also covered some of the roles and responsibilities of the state agency reviewer during the on-site portion of the administrative review. After both of those are completed and all information has been obtained and reviewed, corrective action, technical assistance, and commendations will be noted by the reviewer, and then an exit conference will be held with the reviewer and any sponsor or school food authority staff willing to be present. Your reviewer will schedule this with you to go over the commendations, the technical assistance, and the required corrective action and fiscal action if applicable. Corrective actions include a timeline for after the review for completing any items needing to demonstrate that issues or areas of non-compliance during the review were revealed. The deadlines or timelines for completing corrective action will vary based on the number of findings and on the written responses to those findings. Your SFA is responsible for responding to all corrective actions. Each corrective action response needs to include what will be done to correct the issue, the plan to correct the issue, how the sponsor will ensure future compliance, and what documentation will be available to support this response. After you've submitted completed answers to demonstrate your corrective action plan, a reviewer will approve the corrective action and move forward with closing the review. The review results will be posted to our website following the exit conference.